Just see, yeah, looks good. So how's everyone doing? Great to have as a recurring guest on the show, Bobby Milone from Yankee Twitter. It is great to be joined by you, man. How you doing?
Uh, can't wait for the season to start in a week, right? I mean, we're a week
Yep.
away.
Yeah, I know. Very exciting, and it's definitely crazy. Like with the WBC and everything, like it really like just kind of like jumped up on me. It was like, wow, it's crazy that like the WBC ended yesterday. And now we have like a week to go until the season starts. So it's crazy. It's crazy. Um, just a couple things logistically for people watching. If you're watching on Twitter, that's great. If you're watching on YouTube, in order to comment on the show and get kind of some comments to us, check out the YouTube and you can comment there um, and everything. So let's get right into it. So basically, kind of the way we're gonna go through this is, we'll kind of break down the whole team. We'll kind of break down the whole, the whole season that's coming up. And I guess I wanted to start here, basically. So you flash back 1 year to, you know, 2025. Around this time, March, whatever today is, 18th, 19th of 2025. Garrett Cole was pretty much done for the
Yeah.
year with Tommy John. Giancarlo Stanton was out until the middle of June. There was no third baseman on the roster. Cam Schlittler was not even a thought amongst most Yankee fans. Maybe yourself, but not most run of the mill Yankee fans. And now you fast forward to this year, and I can't help but be somewhat optimistic about this Yankee team. Am I crazy?
No, I mean, you just hit it on the head. Like, if you look back a year ago, there were so many openings or so many holes, really, that you knew that it was going to be to the deadline. Like, you could have wishful thought, like maybe a May thing or a June thing, but everything happened like right there on deadline day. So they had to wait a full 4 months before moves were made. So this year, I was just thinking before coming on, like the amount of depth, especially in the bench area, they're going to be sending down, three, four guys that would have easily been on last year's team that this year is probably going to go to AAA, or in the case of De Jong, might be even released if he's not guaranteed a spot. So
Yeah.
um, it's pretty nice to knowing that the holes that were there last year are limited.
Yeah, and it's a great point that when you got to last deadline, the Yankees made a ton of additions. They
Yeah.
brought in McMahon, they brought in Doval, they brought in Bird, and a lot of guys like that obviously ended up kind of letting the Yankees go
Mhm.
on that run down the stretch of the season. I guess let's start here, kind of talking about the roster. You put out a tweet earlier today saying the starting rotation in July could
Yeah.
be Cole, Rodon, Freed, Schlittler, and Will Warren as the five starter. And you said that's one of the best starting rotations kind of that we've had in many years. I guess with the opening day rotation, where it looks like to start the season, you're going to have Max Fried, you're going to have Cam Schlittler, Will Warren, Ryan Weathers, and Luis Heel. I guess how do we feel about the starting rotation at the beginning of the year, with the idea that obviously we're going to improve the rotation a lot as the season goes forward?
Right. I think we're going to probably see a lot of. I mean, you don't want to. People don't want to hear this, but you're going to see a lot of Blackburn. You're going to see a lot of Yarborough, especially if Heel or Weathers are not doing a good job in going 3, 4, and if they're giving up 4, 5, 6 runs, you know, the thing that I'm really interested is how quick of a hook are certain players are going to have. You know what I'm saying? I think the talk is, we're looking at, Carlos Rodon probably be back end of April, early May. Cole pitched today, so
Yep.
we're
Yep.
looking we're,
Yep.
we're looking probably at best mid-May, right? 2 months from now, they're going to go very slow with him. So if we're going in that path, they're going to be quick hooks. Um, I think the common thing that we hear a lot now is the off days that they have the first few weeks of the season where they might only go with a four-man rotation. I think that is probably the smartest move. But you also have to be careful. I mean, the way I look at it is Cam Schlittler and Will Warren, you know, their arms, right? Will Warren, I think, led baseball last year with 33 starts. You're going to be asking a lot of him to repeat that the second year in a row. And how many innings is Schlittler going to do, and how they're going to treat him? So, am I a little nervous? A little, but I'm more worried about how quick their hooks are than if they do bad. Like, are they going to leave them in there longer than they're necessary? I don't think so. I think they view this season as, you know, as I don't want to say a window that could close, but with the upcoming CBA for next year, I think they're going all out this year in terms of providing the team, and you see that now with the payroll, which is I think close to 350 million.
Well, speaking of a guy who pitched today, Legrand has been a really big discussion amongst Yankee fans. I mean, this is a guy who, this spring I believe had an ERA under one. Now, obviously, it's spring training. You have to take it with a grain of salt. But, you know, I saw something earlier like 47 pitches above 100 miles an hour this spring. What do you envision kind of staying on we just spoke about the rotation. What is Carlos Legrand's role on the 26 Yankees? Because to me, this is a guy who could be a huge weapon for this team. Obviously, you hope he's a starter down the line, but he could be a high leverage reliever and
Oh,
a bullpen piece that the
yeah.
Yankees use this year, especially with some of the bullpen concerns that we'll get to.
I don't want to keep using and dropping his name tonight because he's not paying me for anything. But Joel Sherman's been on the money pretty much this winter with a lot of things, and he just put it out something yesterday, and it, I look for common sense when I look for takes. Like, is it common sense? And he brought up, what the Brewers did with Peralta, with Woodruff, with Coben Burns a couple of years ago, and through when they came up, they started in the bullpen and they worked their way in the rotation. I don't want to talk about I think Legrande is 22 or 23. I think he's 22, right? I'm not looking at him at 26, 27, 28, 29 when he's, really in his starting his prime and filling out his body. What I envision him this year is pretty much what they did with Mariano in 96 and what they did with Phil Hughes in '09, which they
Mm-hmm.
had, one stayed in the rotation. Phil Hughes went back one stayed in the bullpen when as Phil Hughes went into rotation. Um, the best thing I think they could do is I don't want to say stretch him out in the major league level, but what they did with like I said, what they did with Mariano in '96 was pure brilliance. Where if a pitcher had a lead 4-2, 3-2, 5-4, they would Torrey would have put him in the fifth inning or the sixth inning, mostly the sixth inning, and let him pitch two,
Mm-hmm.
3 innings, and just it discouraged the other team because he was up there that first year. Before he had the cutter, he had a fastball, right? He had a great
Mm-hmm.
moving fastball. So he was building innings, and I think his that first year, '96, he had 90 innings. So if Legrande is up here and you put him in the bullpen, and like you're mentioning, he's throwing 40 pitches over 100 miles an hour. You know, give him 2 innings where you're building him up, where he's not going to be ending up the year with 50, 60 innings, but in the 80 to 100 range, and use him as that weapon. Like, why are we wasting him in Scranton when he can make a difference here?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And to even further that point, I think, if you look at this Yankee team on paper, I think the one area where you could say maybe it's a little bit of a weakness, at least at the start of the year, is the bullpen. I
Yeah.
mean, opening day bullpen, Bednar, Duvall, Hill, Cruz, Yarbrough, Bird, Blackburn, and Winquest. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe Hedrick gets it. Yerry De Los Santos is out there. So now, obviously, the Yankees will add at the deadline, but there is a need in the back. Is not even in the back end because Bednar, I think, is a really good closer. Doval showed some things towards the end of last year. But there's a need for
Yeah,
a fireman, kind of like what Luke Weaver honestly was able to do a few years ago
yeah.
when they made the World Series, where he pitched like 2, 3 innings at a time, and
Hmm.
he was able to really give the Yankees a ton of great, multi-inning outings. And obviously, we've seen it in the past with Dellin Betances, and you bring up Mariano, like guys that obviously did it at that level. Um, what is the what is kind of your thoughts on the back end of the Yankee bullpen here? The and when not back end, the bottom four guys in the bullpen, because we feel good about the top guys, but some of these other guys,
Yeah.
how do we feel about those guys?
Well, I can tell you right now, I think all those guys, when you're looking at Yarborough and Blackburn, and whoever is that last spot, I think Hill is going to be there the full year. So, I mean, I think
Yep.
there's five guys. It's really like three guys and what they're going to do with them. I like I said, I'm going back to Sherman. I think we had I one thing that they have lacked in the past. Right now, we're probably could we could look at possibly Weathers, and uh, you know they could bring that bullpen a lot of and even this Giovanni Cruz, which we don't know that much about, right?
Yep.
And he could
Yep.
be up here sometime, this summer. Now, granted, he had control problems, right? So he had shoulder problems. So we want to see how he is. But the ability of maybe having four guys throwing in the upper 90s and close and over 100 miles an hour is weapons to have this season. So I don't know. I mean, I think you know Blackburn in that last spot. There's two spots that are opening. I think Yarbrough will probably be there because I think his contract's like 3 million, whereas I think Blackburn was 1 million. They could easily cut that.
You
I'm
also
not
can't
saying
send
that
us
they can't
down,
cut.
right? Right. You can't send
Yeah,
Yarbrough down. Yep.
so I mean, if you're going to cut that, you're eating $6 million if you're including the tax, right? So I don't think. But you made a point that, and I was thinking about that, because I knew possibly, what we're going to do at the deadline. I don't think they're having a real big deadline because I don't think there's needs that they can't. One thing that Sherman said, and it's true. I think and you saw it last year. We were talking about who they're going to trade for at the deadline last year, and the best option for a starting pitcher is what they had down below in Cam Schlittler. Like you could say, well,
Yeah.
we want to trade for Sandy. We want to trade. I forgot who the other pitcher was last year. That that went to other places, but and I was making this point last summer. Their internal evaluation is saying, well, what we have in the farm is better than what we have to give up because we have to pay that cost in getting
Yeah.
players. And when you have Legrande, when you have Rodriguez, and when you have Hess, I think those three guys will get the opportunity before possibly making any moves. Because you want to see what you have before you trade them away.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we were having conversations last summer about, Brad
Yeah.
Keller, guys like that, or,
Yes.
or Mitch Keller, whatever his
Yeah.
name was.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of great options, and it turned out that Schlittler, as you mentioned, was the best option. He went
Yeah.
out there, was great in the playoffs, and everything. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's interesting. I guess one more piece on the starter, on the pitching, and then we'll transition. Um, Along with Legrand, some of these other prospects that the Yankees have, Elmer Rodriguez, Ben Hess. Do you view these guys as depth? Do you view them as trade chips? Like, how do we? What is your kind of scouting report and thoughts on some of these guys and how they're going to maybe impact the Yankees this year and beyond?
As I put out there, I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky to have people who drop me information, from time to time, and I share it with you a lot of the time, the stuff I get.
Mm,
And I think with the potential of a work stoppage next year, I don't know how, and this is something that I was going to tweet, and now I'm saying it out over here. I don't know how open they are going to be to making moves, okay? Because I don't think a salary cap necessarily is going to happen, but there could be could be changes in the tax structure where it's the point where you're gonna have to probably maybe lower payroll. How do you do that? By keeping those three arms, right? Arms are what cost you money. right now in the Yankees, rotation, they have, I'm not doing rough math right now, but there's over $80 million in three arms, right? You could see
Yeah.
this year they haven't really put money into the bullpen, whereas in other years they have invested in the bullpen, right? Bednar is going to be a free agent after this year. Who's replacing him? How are you paying for that? I don't know how much Bednar will cost on the open market, but if he has a big year, it's going to be 15, 14 to $18 million, possibly more if he really has a solid year.
Yeah.
That's why I say when people say, well, this person's future as a starting pitcher. I remember, like, listen, I'm an older fellow, okay? So when I was a lot of these kids' age, and Mariano was just going and mulling players down in '96, I had them in the rotation. They let Wetland go, right, in '96 because what they had is Rivera, and things were price structure was different. They didn't want to pay Wetland, so they went with very Mariano in the bullpen, and he became somebody. I'm not saying that's the way they would go, but you also have to look of what the future is, and in terms of, like I said, the CBA. So do I think those players are on the table, right? You got to tell me who you're going to be trading them for. Like somebody said, I'll trade them for Scooble. Okay, you're going to get Scooble for a year, and he's going to walk. They're not going to pay that kind of money. So before you think about who are you moving, right? Are those players better than the players you're receiving long term, financially and on the field? And I think from what I hear, they're very high on those three players. Very high.
Yeah, well, they've all had really good springs.
Yeah.
Not that again, that's the end all be all, but I mean, you just kind of see the potential. Ben Hess, we've discussed. Him really being I think you compared him to Lance Lynn, which was a really
Yeah.
great comparison. The body type is very similar. Really interesting stuff in the rotation. Let's pivot to the offense a little bit. Trent Grisham, 1 year qualifying offer. Now that we kind of have taken a step back, the offseason is over. We kind of know what everything happened with the Bellinger re-signing, all those things. What were your thoughts on should the Yankees have given Trent Grisham the qualifying offer? What are your thoughts there?
Listen, when they gave him the qualifying offer, I actually thought they thought that he was going to sign a 3 4 year deal, 45 to 70+ million and walk away for it. If you give them the truth serum, I don't think they thought he was coming back. And if he was going to come back, there was going to be, the ability to raise the payroll. So Hal had to be involved in this in some ways because he's coming back. You're adding $22 million. The thing that, if you ask me if there's one player who on this year's team might not be here or may not be in the lineup come say August, I think it's him. Right?
Mm.
I mean,
Mm.
if you look at his stats, and the most mind-boggling thing, he had 34 home runs last year. By far, he had nine doubles. Nine doubles.
And
I
34
think
home
my
runs.
9-year-old had more doubles playing last year than him. But that's what I'm saying. He had a very odd year. He had some very big home runs. The we've been told he was playing with an injured hamstring the whole year. Okay, I'm not. I think that's legit, right? So when you see him maybe
He got injured. He got injured in I think like the middle of the year. I remember he like
correct. So if
missed
you
the
see
beginning
him
of the year.
lollygagging maybe in the outfield, I think there's more to it. I'm gonna cut the guy a break in there and stuff like that. But here's the thing: if he's hitting, say it's July the 1st, and he's got 8 home runs, he's batting around 200. And meanwhile down in AAA, either Jones or Dominguez is on fire. I think I think there's a possible. I don't think they're going outside the organization for a bat unless the two in the down, Jones and Dominguez are totally missing the mark. You know what I mean? I think if either of them are doing, if Jones is having the kind of season he had last year, minus being injured, and the K rate is 26, 27, and Dominguez is playing a lot better defense. You know, I have put those two guys in so many trades the past couple of years, and I'm starting to realize that probably the Yankees evaluators see them part more of as the future than in a deal. Because with Grisham and the always possible injury of Stanton, you're going to need cheap bats that could produce. Now, Dominguez produced here last year. He didn't produce in the field, but I think he had a good rookie campaign. Jones, I think, you know, Sherman did a great take on him. I think the Yankees are just afraid to let him go because what he might be on another team. And you let him go, and he goes on another team, and he still strikes out, but he's hitting bombs. Offense is as a premium. So when we're getting back to Grisham, right, I think that he has a shorter runway than any other player on that team.
So let's say we wake up in August and we're watching a Yankee game, and let's say you're right, Trent Grisham's been replaced.
Yeah.
Let's say he's not producing. Do you think two out of Dominguez and Jones, do you think one is on the team? Do you think both are on the team, or do you think none are on the team at
I
that
think
point?
come August the 1st, which I usually say is the home stretch, I think both. If I had a guess this year, I think one is definitely on the team, and I think there's better than a good chance that both of them are on a team. I don't really have that much faith in Grisham repeating the same kind of year he did last year, and I think you see that already in spring training, them using Rice in the lead up spot.
Yeah.
That's where I think where reading the tea leaves, I think themselves are a little cautious, and if that's the case, you want to have that person over there to lead off.
J- Jones this spring 1.345 OPS and a K rate under 30%. So
Yeah,
definitely improving numbers. Now, this is my take, and you let me know what you think. I don't think that Jones and Dominguez can coexist on the future Yankees because I look at the outfield. Cody Bellinger's locked in, at least for a couple years. Aaron Judge is going to be the right fielder for, a long time still. How do you fit? I understand that there's a clear need in center field that you might see
yeah.
as soon as next year. But how do both of those guys coexist? Do you think they both can be on a future Yankee team? I don't really see it. I think
I
I
think
think it's got to be one or the other. But as you mentioned, it might not be. They might just keep both of them.
yeah, I think that one of the reasons why I could see both of them here, it's really two reasons. One is, you know, like I said, Stanton and next year's his last year, and most likely is Grisham's last year. I think they want to keep the DH slot open, and I think rotate whether it's and you've been seeing it this spring. Jones is playing right field. He's playing left field. He's playing center field. Right. Um, I think you're going to see that in AAA. You're going to see that, and you're also going to see Dominguez move around the outfield. But I think there's a way between injury where 450 to 500 bats is possible. Where if walking through the DH spot, I think as Judge gets older, Judge is going to DH more. He I believe is, if I do my math right, 34 this year. He'll be 35 next year. You're getting into that spot where where Stanton leaves, Judge might go into the quasi, and he doesn't want to DH, but by just keeping his legs and his 280 foot pound body healthy, he's going to have to DH 3 days a week. So you could have that rotation, and you want to see what they have too. I mean, I compare Dominguez to Milky Cabrera. That's what I see him in him. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think people expected way more than that he what he really is.
Yeah, the issue is the defense, though, right? So
Yeah,
Melky, not a great hitter, kind of a decent, obviously decent hitter, but he was a great center fielder defensively. From what I remember about him. Dominguez obviously has those concerns. That would be the only thing. But I see
yeah.
like the switch hitting, like I see that comparison for him.
You want like
Obviously, yeah.
I think going down over here, both of them being in Scranton is not a bad thing. And that's the thing that we have to. I think a lot of fans get impatient. Well, why are they wasting over there? Well, I think one is 23. I think Jones turns 25 in May, right? You're not talking about 27. And if even if you did, you know, you they don't check, like I always say, they don't check IDs on the field. When they develop, and if you have them and they're affordable and you're going to get them through their prime years, just if you just play this out by 2 years, right? Just say we're in 2028. Jones is 27 and Dominguez is 25. By no stretch of the mean are they old, and you still have them for 3, 4 years of control in their prime years. You work now. The fear is though, and I understand this with Yankee fans. Are they another Miggy? What's his name?
Miguel Andujar. Miguel
Andujar?
Andujar.
Are they an Andujar? Are they a Gary Sanchez? Are
Hmm.
they Frazier? How are they going to be? And I put it this way: I think the Yankee evaluators and hitting coaches are a lot different than we saw a decade ago, where I don't know how much they really evaluated these players and understood these players and held them on too long. I just saw something flash. What was his name? Peraza. What was his first name?
Oswald
Oswald.
Peraza.
He's having a
Yeah.
good year with the
Right.
Angels,
Huge. Right. Huge spring. Yeah. He had a huge spring.
and he's not an old man. He's 25, I think.
Hmm.
So you don't know when they're gonna finally click. The fear is they click when you let them go, and you don't have that control. So I think they kind of hold on to those two. And Sherman made the same point, and rather, see watch them fail here than having the fear of them succeed somewhere else.
Yeah. The thing with Grisham that's really fascinating to me is actually not his offense because I think that that's almost guaranteed to come back to earth. It's the
Yeah.
defensive angle. And last year, the metrics were not kind
Yeah.
to Grisham in center field. Now, again, Grisham is a guy who Aaron Boone always says, this is a Gold Glove caliber center fielder, and I think he was at a certain point. He had the hamstring issue last year, but I think that's another one. That's another thing that I'm going to be watching. Antenna's
Yeah.
kind of up. How is Grisham playing in center field? Because the whole point of kind of having him and Bellinger next to each other, you're supposed to have this elite defensive outfield. Bellinger, we understand, is an elite left fielder defensively, still is. I have no question about that. But Grisham last year was not an elite center fielder defensively. He was not. By the metrics and also by the eye test. Now, you hope that it was because of the injury. But that's another thing we have to watch. Obviously, Dominguez is not a great outfielder, but Jones has the upside with his young legs and the athleticism that he has to be a good defender.
I think you just hit it right there. I mean, I think Bellinger and Judge hit a lot of his faults last year. You know what I mean? And I think especially Bellinger, where you have Death Valley. It's not the Death Valley I remember, but it's still pretty big. You
Yep.
get you have some help over there. So, like I said, the structure of the team is pretty much intact. The only um, person I could see possibly, and remember, as each month goes by, their contract becomes smaller. So if it's July 31st and the two kids or one of the two kids is raking on the farm and Bellinger has at that point about $8 million left, I don't think they wouldn't be minding cutting ties with him if they bring them up. I really don't. I mean, if it's I, I like I know myself, I think there's something with Jones. You can't teach that kind of power, and I think the strikeouts, if it is in the 26, 28 range, and he's got 30 home runs, and more importantly, his back is okay. I wouldn't. They're not gonna leave that on the table down there.
Agreed. Agreed. Just gonna show a comment here on the stream. Go Yankees! Can't wait until Wednesday. Yeah, can't wait either. We're excited. Thank you for the comment. Speaking of Wednesday, the shortstop Wednesday won't be Anthony Volpe for the first time in a few opening days. It'll be Jose Caballero, who we expect to do a good job and fill in. I guess my question to you and my thought is Is Anthony Volpe guaranteed in your mind to get the starting job back this year? And we will get into the future discussion, which I think is maybe
Yeah.
even more impactful. But when he comes back in, let's say, May 1st, is he going to be the everyday shortstop in your mind?
No, and I'll tell you why. And it's a point that I think, like I said, Sherman all brought up. If he's got like something like 20 games or 30 games down in AAA, he gets an extra year of control. So don't think for 1 second
Hmm.
they don't use that excuse. I would be shocked if if Cabby is playing decently, stealing bags, playing sound shortstop. I'm not saying he's I don't think he had one season over 700 OPS, right? So I'm not looking for crazy numbers, but if he's decent, doing his job, moving runners over, playing smart baseball, I think they use that with Voby and keep him down to get that extra year of control, and also let him get the kinks out there. Then in a major, I don't think they just hand it over um, that quickly. I think when you have that ability to get a year of control, you get it, and this is probably the best way to get it.
On that same topic, I mean, I do agree with you. I mean, I think that it's going to be an interesting year for Volpe because
Mm.
unlike the other years that he's been in the major leagues, this is now, I believe, his fourth year now. He's actually going to get work because he's going to be rehabbing, but he's going to get
Yeah,
work in the minor leagues. And I
yeah.
wonder if maybe that can just kind of get him in sync and give him some confidence to
I
actually
hope
go
so.
out and have a good offensive season. Obviously, Yankee fans are really are really hoping so. The Yankees have two middle infield prospects. The Yankees have Dax Kilby and Lombard. George Lombard, we saw this spring. He was
Mhm.
with kind of like Jones. He was with the MLB team until a couple weeks ago or a week ago, and he did a great job. Really had a great spring. He had a home run, I think, off Crochet. The defense looks elite. What does the future of the Yankee middle infield look like? Because I actually, and we'll get to Jazz Chisholm a little bit. To me, it is very likely that Jazz Chisholm doesn't resign. I mean, again, there's going to be a ton of uncertainty with the CBA, but
Yeah.
Dax Kilby, George Lombard, is that the future middle infield for the Yankees? Does Lombard move to third? Like, what happens there?
Well, first of all, I think I'm gonna start off with Kilby first. You just hope to God he keeps progressing up the ladder, right? Like he had a great first couple of, and he really only had like 5 weeks, right? But what we saw from the early numbers, great strike zone decisions. Um, the power will come. I don't think he's a shortstop. I think he's probably going to be a second baseman. I don't think he can play third
Oh,
base. Um, they're going to keep him at shortstop as long as possible because you never know what comes down the pike. But he's just one thing that you don't see that much, and I'm the name is escaping me. He's the prospect for the Tigers, McDonaldin.
McConaughey, yeah, yeah.
He reminds me a lot like that, like where he knows how to do stuff in the strike zone, and when you have that ability to control the strike zone, those players are far and few between. So I mean, I think that if I assume he's probably going to start in Hudson Valley, which at 19 years old is a pretty big step. Um, I would be shocked if he's at Tampa to start the year. But if he's in Hudson Valley and he's putting up those similar, I don't worry about power numbers. Like you power numbers will come, especially when you're 19 years old. Okay, you know, you're a little younger than me, but there were players like Robin Yount and Brett who didn't hit anything until they matured into their body. I think everybody now expects these kids to hit 20, 30 bombs. They're not. But in 2 years, I think he was talking about how he put weight on. I think he's around 200 pounds now. But he's growing in, right? So, but I think he's somebody to watch offensively more than Lombard. I don't know if Lombard is going to be, and I hope I'm wrong, a top offensive player.
Struggled a lot in Double A last year.
Yeah. I think we have to tone down our expectations. I think where he is different than Volpe, I think he's much more athletic. much more athletic, better arm, better range. You put him at shortstop, and he might be a 700, 750 tops OPS player, but I think his defense is going to provide the WAR where at the end of the year you're saying, "Wow, he's got a 4 WAR, right? He's got a 3.5 WAR. He could have a
That was
5."
the thought with That was the thought with Volpe, though.
Yeah,
Like now, obviously, I've watched both players. I think Lombard. Now, Volpe's won a Gold Glove to his credit, but Lombard, I just think is the more. He's got the better build. Like he's just got more,
yeah,
I think, God given ability in the field.
yes,
He's got a way better arm. Volpe obviously doesn't have the greatest arm. Not that you need that to be a great shortstop, but it's just interesting that that was kind of the pathway with Volpe. Like, hey, be a 720, 730 OPS, and you'll have the defense. And he had a couple of years where he had a 3, WAR or whatever, and it was because of the defense. It wasn't
really.
really because of what he was doing with the bat. So yeah, it's a really interesting kind of puzzle to see kind of where things are
Hmm.
gonna play out. And I mentioned Jazz. We have a comment here that I will show. Great outing by Jazz Chisholm today with the past infield ground ball and arguing with the umpire. Well, that's kind of Jazz in a nutshell. Now, Jazz is obviously going to be motivated this year, contract year. Um, you know, I think that Jazz is very talented, right? I think last year, what did he go 30? Did he go 40-40 last year or 30
No,
30?
he
He
very
went
30.
30
Yeah.
30. He went 30-30 last year. It was the first Yankee to do that since Soriano, I think. But I mean, would you re-sign? Like, let's just take the CBA out of it for a second. Would you invest? I mean, he said like something like, I want 8 years, some
Yeah.
crazy amount of money. But would you re-sign him? Would you make it a priority to kind of bring back Jazz and make him a part of the future Yankee team?
No, no,
I
I
agree
mean,
with you. I agree
I,
with you.
I, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think Jazz was perfect for what he was over here and still is for this year. I think, my fear is giving him. He's probably gonna get an Adamas kind of contract where it's gonna be 160 to 200 million. And
Yeah.
honest to God, y- I think he's the type of player that goes, 3 for 5, 2 home runs, 3 stolen bases in a game, something crazy like that, right? And then the next night boots 2 balls that are right there, and it drives the fans crazy. Um, and I think there's other things that I don't want to say may rub other people the wrong way. Maybe not in the locker room, but with the powers that be, and knowing that you have younger players on the farm. Like I said this a couple of weeks ago. I fully expect Lombard at shortstop and Volpe at second base to start the season next year. I don't think Kilby is ready next year. But if I think that's what we're looking at. I think McMahon is signed for another year.
He's got another
So
year.
yeah, and I think McMahon could strike out to the cows come home. He could not hit a beach ball. They don't care. They don't care. I mean,
They got him for defense. They got him for defense. They think he's going to
that's it.
play that role, and they
Hmm.
think he's going to hit home runs. And we've talked about this with some people as well. The Yankees think he can hit 20 home runs,
Yeah,
and they think
correct.
20 home runs, 700 OPS. You play elite defense. That's so much better than what they previously had.
Absolutely.
He was really bad though when he came over
Yeah.
with the bat. The glove was incredible, and he makes
Right.
some plays that are just like it's a pleasure to watch his defense. But it's just the bat needs to come along somewhat. And I've always been of the opinion like not really a McMahon guy because he just can't hit in my opinion. I think we've
Right.
seen it. Like when you're in Coors Field and you can't have an OPS of 800 even. To
Yeah.
me that kind of shows you can't hit, but I'm willing to give it the first 2 months of this year. I'm willing to. Not that he's going anywhere. I'm just as a fan. I'm willing
Yeah.
to be like, okay, what are we getting from this guy? Let's see him full year. Traded midseason is hard. You know that it's hard to get traded midseason. You uproot your family, all those things. Let's see how he does this year.
Yeah. I think they're also saying that yes, he's not in Coors Field, but he's playing in Yankee Stadium. his away parks in the AL East, especially like Camden, they favor left-hand hitters a little bit better than hitters. Um, that he should be able to run into 20 home runs, right? So if he ends the year with 17, 19, whatever, it's close to it. What I think they cannot tolerate is not him doing the little stuff. You know what I mean? Where he should be able to do little stuff with the bat. I don't want to say not to get into double plays. The K's are going to be there. He's not a three outcome hitter. He doesn't walk, right? So you can't say that he could walk. But what you can't do is you can't embarrass yourself. He can't be a 600 hitter, right? Could he be a 675, 680 hitter and play excellent defense, be smart, on the field? You know, the Yankees are not going to lose the American League East because their seventh, eighth, and ninth place hitter is are not doing the job. They're going to lose the American League East if their 1 through 6 hitters don't do their job. That's how I look at it. And every year I say, and I look back at this every year. I say I name 4 hitters. So this year it's Judge, Stanton, Rice, um, and who's the third? And Bellinger, right? If those 4 guys, and I'm leaving Jazz out, I'm leaving Wells out, right? If those 4 guys hit 130 home runs, they're going to win the East. And I look back at other years I made this prediction, and it's been right. The years that they don't do that, there's been injuries. So if they stay healthy, the top 6 hitters, right, which are Judge, Stanton, Bellinger, probably Wells, Jazz, and Rice. If they do their job, then Jazz, Cabrera, and McMahon just have to be serviceable and do the little things. And
Yeah,
I
it's a
think
great,
having a
it's a great point.
and, and I think more importantly, you're going to see a lot of right-hand hitters when there's a lefty on the mound. So you're going to see Goldie, you're going to see Rosario, you're going to see Randall Grishik. You're going to see them.
They,
They're not on the bench to sit on the bench. They're going to play.
No,
You
they've
know.
got the depth. They've got the depth, really. I mean, kind of we can transition a little bit into a bench discussion, and then we'll just kind of hit on a couple more things before
Yeah.
we finish up here. The Yankees made a decision last deadline. They went out and got Rosario and Caballero at the deadline, and when they made the Caballero trade, I remember
Mhm.
tweeting this. I was like, "This is my favorite move," because the
Yeah.
Yankees never, when the Yankees have their team, they just kind of say, "All right, the 3 guys on the bench, who cares?" I mean, the Yankees they've had some awful benches in the Aaron Boone era. I
Yes.
remember starting some seasons, and it's like, who are these guys on the bench? Like, who are these guys that they're playing? You look at the bench to start the season. They basically announced today Escara is going to make the team. Escara, Goldschmidt, Rosario, Grichuk. Like, that's a really good bench. Like, Randall Grichuk's a good hitter against lefties. We
Right.
understand what Paul Goldschmidt did last year, and Rosario kills lefties. So there's going to be a lefty on the mound, and the Yankees are going to throw at them Goldie, Stanton, Judge, Rosario, Grichuk, and it's like they're going to have a real platoon advantage.
Right.
And then when they obviously have their line up against right-handed pitching. So I love the bench. I guess I have a question on a couple of guys here though. Oswaldo, like, what happens? Who is the odd man out on this bench when? Now, obviously, there's going to be injuries, and that's what you're going to say to me.
Yeah.
But when Anthony Volpe comes back, right? Is Oswaldo Cabrera just depth this year? Like, what is kind of what are the Yankees going to do when they kind of get fully healthy with the bench? Because there's just a lot of bodies on the bench right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think Escara maybe going down, right, and then they
He's
play
got
with
options.
he's
He's got
got the
options.
option. He goes down. He goes down. But you look at Cabrera. I hate saying this, but he might be playing a lot of time this year in AAA. And what's his name? Max was a Schumann. Is that his name?
Schumann,
Yeah.
yeah, he's
I
probably going to be in AAA. I would
yeah.
think.
I mean, you're going to see him. I know they like Paul DeJong, right? They really they did like him. Could they tie him up in AAA for a month? He's probably going to ask for his release next
Right.
week. My guess, because he could get a job somewhere, right? And then you have Jones and Spencer also in, double and triple A. So there's going to be depth in which I don't even remember of serviceable. And I'm not saying gray backs. I'm saying people who have a clue, right? We're not going to get and we have Jorbit, right? We're not going to get a Jorbit. We're probably going to get Cabrera or Schumann. So, and Volpe is going to be down there at some point, right? So you're going to see some stuff. I think it all shakes out. Um, I don't think they would cut Rosario or Goldie at any point this year. I think those two guys are on the bench. Grishik, and that other open spot are, you know, it's to debate what happens during the course of the year. Um, Goldie and I think Rosario are two glue, or as we call them, glue pieces. Not to me and you, but to the 26 guys in the clubhouse, right, and to the manager. And I don't think they would rock that boat.
Can I tell you what I think the key to the season is for the Yankees?
Please.
What is Garrett Cole going to look like when he comes back? Now, sight for sore eyes, you mentioned that Garrett Cole's on the mound today, pitches 1 inning, 10 pitches. I found it funny that the Red Sox, bunted on the first play of the game there. That's pretty. Guys coming back from a year out, and Alex Cora is giving the bunts on the spring training game. Gotta love it. But I mean, to me, like, that's the biggest difference. Like, last year, there was a mental block for me a little bit because you got to the playoffs and it's like, are the Yankees. And look, they could have. They were in the playoffs. They almost won the division. But there was a little bit of a mental block where it's like, are the Yankees actually going to win the World Series and Garrett Cole's going to be sitting on the shelf? Like, it never really computed in my head. What do you think we're going to see from this guy when he takes them out in June? And then obviously the whole thing's going to be you've got to build him up for October. It really doesn't matter at all what he does in the regular season. There has to
Right.
be a build up for October.
Um, because he's coming off Tommy John, the biggest thing is command and control, right? He's built different than us, the normal pitcher, right? I think he's 35. But you like I said, you're a little younger than me. He is one of those old time pitchers. Like the Jack Morris, when Clemens was in the stuff. They're just built different. Where even though he has an age number, you don't look at that. Now, if he's throwing 96 to 98, and I know today he probably, let it all out. If the command is there, like you just said, what you're looking for is what is he in August and beyond. So if he comes up, May the 20th, and he's K'ing 12 people, and we're like, oh my, this is amazing. 5 days later, he's given up 8 runs. Don't be surprised, because you're filling out your arms. The only difference I would say is, and we hear this all the time, nobody knows their arm better than Garrett Cole. So
Yep.
it leads me to believe we are not going to see highs and lows. We're going to probably see what we get when we get it. You know what I mean? Which I think is going to be still a top of the line pitcher. I'm more worried, and I hate saying this, like Max Fried. Like, where is he going to be this year? The postseason wasn't too friendly to him. You know what I mean? That started in Toronto, and even though I think he's more of a 3-4 run pitcher than the pitcher we saw early last year, where he was in the twos. And I think we have to come to that. We have to come to that, area. That's where he's going to be. Um, and Rodon, when he comes back, I think you're talking about key to the season stuff. I think Cam Schlittler and what we're hearing, it's like a dream, right? Is he really this good, or could be this good? Because if he is, they haven't had somebody like him, and I don't want to compare him to like Pettit. They haven't had a pitcher like him, and I'm going back and dating myself to Gidry, where
Yeah,
you
I don't
have a
even know. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. Like, even I mean, Pettit was great. Not gonna,
he wasn't that type of pitcher.
right.
Right. He wasn't that. The type they had, you got to go back to, and I don't remember because I was still, a child, is Gidry, where you got somebody at any night just could just dominate. I don't, we're hearing stories about that. Like he is a mini Cole, not size, but that's the kind of, we haven't had that. The Yankees and even their runs never had that type of young pitcher. He's 25, I believe, this year. If he stays healthy and he's throwing with multiple pitches, and then the second person, and I'm one of the few people that are high on him, is Will Warren. And the person I use next to him is Hunter Brown. And people say, well, Hunter Brown was third in Cy Young. How can you say this for Will Warren? Well, 3 years ago, look at Hunter Brown's stats. He was a 5.5 ERA pitching for Houston. And I think they went to the World Series that year, by the way. Did you think that? Did anybody think that he was going to be? You got to give some of the players now are developing, and maybe because of COVID, are developing more between the ages of 24 and 28 than they were at, say, 20 to 24.
It's an interesting
So,
point. That's an interesting point. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Will Warren, I think he's 26 maybe. So let him be whatever it is. Let him grow to be that pitcher it
Well,
is.
yeah, the great thing about Warren is they don't need him to be great. They need him to
Yeah,
just be
exactly.
like if he gives you a 4 ERA and can strike out, last year I believe he had like 9.5 Ks per nine. If he gets that up to like 10, that's great from a guy like him. And him and Heel were kind of like this, and now you're starting to see Warren kind of go like this and get
Right.
above him. I think if you're asking me who's going to have a better 2026 season, I think it's easily Will Warren over Heel. I mean, Heel, I'm not even sure if Heel's going to be in the rotation when you get to like July. I would probably
Yeah.
bet on him not being, especially with like Weathers. Like, this is one thing I mentioned. Like, the Yankees, like, knock on wood, like, the pitching depth is great for this team. I mean, there's just so
Yeah.
many names. Like, there's so many guys that they can pull.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy needs to start a game. Like, they've got the arms. They've got the
Yeah,
arms.
like, I don't know if Weathers has options. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I think he might. But Heel has an option left. So,
Mm.
where they're going to be in June, and injuries, of course, happen. They don't go through a season. I will say this, the biggest key, and I'm gonna just piggyback on what I said. The biggest key is health, without a question. You know, the the issue, and we used to talk about this, a few years ago. You know, their issue was health. And the past two seasons, 24 and 25, I remember I put out a tweet in 2023. They had something like 2,200 days on the disabled list, or whatever they call it now, right? Now, they cut that in half the past 2 years. So and that's with full year seasons of Cole being on the disabled list and Stanton being on the disabled list. Injuries are going
Yeah.
to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think they could mask month long injuries better with the depth they have than they could have had in the past. Um, I think the health. My two biggest things that overshadow everything is their health and how do they play against the American League East. That's going to decide their future this year. Because if they're playing like they played last year, and I think they were maybe slightly or just below 500 against the AL East, that's going to be an issue. You can't struggle against Boston. You can't struggle against Toronto. They wiped out the Rays. Well, they were playing in their home ballpark, right? They were playing in Steinbrenner. They're going back to the Trop this year,
They are.
right?
Yes. Yes, they are. Yep.
So I think last year's record against Baltimore, if I remember, was like 11 wins. So you can't feast on that. And Baltimore's going to be better this year. So you need a.
Yeah.
I think I might be wrong. I think they were 20. Maybe they were 20 and 27 or something. I don't know, something like that. But
It was about 500. I mean, they were. I mean, they were really bad against the Blue Jays. Really bad last year.
yeah, and you can't do that. And I just like you just said before. There were a different team after the deadline, and I think you're going to see people with shorter. There's not going to be, as they use the term, runway with a lot of these players, especially when you have a AAA team that's going to have players to replace that person. You either buck up or you're gone.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like this Yankee AAA team. I mean, Cabrera, Jones, and Dominguez. I mean,
And
like,
Vogue, I mean, like you said,
and Volpe at some point when
yeah,
he's rehabbing. That's like three or four MLB players on the AAA team.
eh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
And with their pitching too. I mean, you might have Larande, Rodriguez, Hess down there, and then there's some other arms like Chase Hampton's coming back. I don't know where Bryce Cunningham, what's going on with him, but you may have some arms go there. Kyle Carr, they have some depth in the pitching department that is slowly working their way to the 40 man. That you're going to see what's going on. That you're going to see. You want to see what they are.
for sure. Just want to hit one more comment, and then I'll ask you
Yeah,
one more question, and we can get out of here.
no
Thank you
problem.
again for joining. Really been a great conversation here. So, Uh, the Yankees farmed. This is the comment. The Yankees farmed against the White Sox and Orioles. Both teams got better while the AL East became the most competitive division. This isn't good. Well, look, I think Bobby mentioned it. I mentioned it. Like, they've got to do well. Well, there's two things. You got to do well against the AL East. That's a given. We both believe that.
Yeah,
But the reality is, look how great teams build their record. One of the trademarks of being a great team is you beat bad teams. There are bad teams in Major League Baseball. When they're on your
yeah,
schedule, you've got to get 3 out of 3, not 2 out of 3. You play those 3 game series, right? That's the way baseball works. Get 3 out of 3. Sweet. I remember one year Judge was like, we want to sweep these series. Like, that's what you got to do. That's how you build a great record. You're playing teams like the Blue Jays, the Red Sox. The American League East is a great division, and I think that I mean, I think there's 4 teams in the AL East that could legitimately win the division. The Orioles probably can't win the division with the Yankees, Blue Jays,
yeah.
and Red Sox. But the other 3, like if you say to me, hey, would it surprise you if one of those 3 win the AL East? I would say no. It wouldn't surprise me if any of them did. And this is my last question to you. The Yankees are the favorite in the AL East. Second, basically a tie between Toronto and Boston, and then the Orioles come in fourth. This is odds based according to FanDuel.
Yeah.
Who Last question: who worries you the most as a competitor to the Yankees in the AL East out of those 3 other teams?
Probably still Toronto. Yeah, I would still think I still Toronto. I mean, they did some smart moves this year. I mean, they lost Bichette, right? But they got some quality players. They're pitching. I'm still thinking of Boston. Um, I don't know how I don't know how their pitching is going to be, how their pen's going to be. I think they have more holes. But you saw it today. I'm a big Connor Early fan. They may take Peyton Tolley and move him into the pen. I mean, who knows what they do? They
Yeah,
got some young pitching.
they've
You
got a
know,
staff. They've got a staff. That's the concern. I honestly, my concern with the Red Sox is their offense. I don't
yeah,
love their offense. They lost Bregman. Roman Anthony, we get is
yeah.
probably going to be a
But
superstar.
Durbin is going to be a pain in the ass. I can tell you that right now. He's going to be a pain in the ass. Caleb
Durbin is
Durbin,
Durbin is
yeah,
a Red Sox.
yeah. He's playing third
Oh
base.
my God!
He's,
I don't know why I didn't know that.
yeah,
That's crazy. Oh,
yeah.
he's gonna kill the
Yeah,
Yankees. Oh my
absolutely,
God, that just
absolutely.
ruined my day.
Yeah, I think and then there's health. Like you all have to look around the health. I think the Rays are going to be competitive. I think Baltimore is going to be competitive. Like I'll drop a little secret over here right on your show. Is that I do my predictions every year. I think the Yankees win the East. I think they're probably a 95 to 97 win team. This is barring that everybody still stays healthy. I don't know if that's the best record in the American League, but I do think they probably, if they're around that number, they get one of the top 2 spots. On a parlay on that, I don't see any way they don't make the playoffs. So if Boston or the O's or the Jays have a great year, I still think they get one of the slots. And we saw a 3 game series is a lot better than a 1 game do or die situation, right? Because they lost what the first game last year and then they won the next 2. Am I correct? Or
they
am I
had the
losing my
series.
mind?
They had the series at home. They lost the first game of that three
Yeah,
game wild card, and then they won the
right.
last 2. Yep,
Right. So
that's right.
I do think, I'm not I don't even think, the powers that be that run the organization, they see them as a play. They don't say favorites. They'll say it to the media and stuff, but deep downside, I think they just see them as a playoff team. I think this is probably the best tw- 26-man roster, even 40-man roster they have had probably since 2012
Hmm.
when they lost
Wow.
to when they lost in the championship series to the
To the
Tigers.
Tigers. Yeah.
Yeah, they have, they had
Hmm.
a Banyas on the bench and they had other, players. They could pull people out. They were just a better, they were that's when I think if you want to say when did the that Yankee dynasty that Jeter started died, it was when he got hurt that night, right? That's when it ended.
Yeah.
And it's really hasn't come around. Um, with only one World Series appearance, in 16, or what was it, in 15 years, and they finally made it, or last year in
In
14
20
years.
24.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2024, 15 years. So, I mean, I don't think that necessarily the AL became a better, overall. I think it was spread around where each team maybe got a little better. But the Yankees, if the key is the health. If Judge misses time, there's going to be an issue. If Bellinger misses time, there's going to. I'm not necessarily worried about Stanton missing time because he always misses time. It's when you miss the time,
You kind
right?
of bake. Yeah, you kind of bake it in. You kind of
You
bake it
know,
in with
there's
Stanton.
and I posted, I don't know, this yesterday or today. The schedule is not as favorable in August and September as it was in the past,
I saw that. I saw that.
and
Yeah.
that's going to be
Yeah.
that's going to be a key where you got to win these earlier games.
Well, I think this is what I'll say. You said a lot there and a lot of good things. This is the deepest Yankee team
Yeah.
I've ever seen since those days. The obviously like the 2009 championship team, like those teams in that like 4 year window until Jeter like broke his ankle. So I agree with you on that. Here's the one thing I'll say, and I don't think you necessarily said it, but you kind of saying the Yankees view themselves as a playoff team, and they look at it more as get in the playoffs versus the division. And I think the Yankees are. They've got to focus this year specifically, though, in my opinion, on winning the division because
Oh,
like
absolutely.
last year,
Yeah.
you got in that series against Toronto, and like Toronto looked like the better team, but we have no idea what that series could have looked like if the Yankees got game 1 and 2 at Yankee Stadium. We really don't know. Like we ran into a buzzsaw, and I hate playing in Rogers
100%.
Center because it's a brutal place to play. The fans there are incredible. They really are. They're hungry fans. It's a tough place to play. The Yankees won 1 of 2 in New York, and they lost both in Toronto. So the idea is if you got an extra game, like they possibly had a chance. I think if they hosted that series, and the way you're going to host the series is by winning the division. So I think the Yankees need to
Yeah.
try to make that a priority
100%.
this year. This year.
100%. I don't think I think if you ask them, I don't think they thought that the Jays were going. I think they thought the Jays were going to collapse
Mm-hmm.
in September, and they kept on winning with the Yankees. That's how it is, and you get tied. I think they saw themselves in their analytics as being plus 2 or 3 games, and it became, you know, the computer could tell you all this stuff, but the guys, the human bodies play the game, and they kept on winning.
Well, it's the
And
bullpen too. It's the bull
yeah,
you mentioned early in the season, like Devin Williams gave and Weaver, like they gave games away last year. And the
yeah. I
idea is
mean,
this year with Doval and Bednar, you hopefully don't give Bednar is the big key as the closer. Hopefully they don't give those games away. That's what you're thinking.
yeah, I think absolutely. I think last year they gave, and that's what they said. Their pen gave games away. Like the key is how much rope do they give these guys, and before and that, because I can tell you right now, you're gonna if it's April the 25th and they blew some games, there's going to be a lot of crying. And if Legrande is not here, why is so and so still here and not Legrande? So I think
Agreed.
like we have talked about in the past and stuff. These early games matter, um, and of course they add up at the end of the year. But I think we got to just like just how they think. You know, when you get Cole back and you get Rodon, then that's where I think the real fun begins.
Agreed. Well, again, Bobby, appreciate everything. Appreciate you coming on the show.
It was a
Thank you again.
blast. I really hope to be on again this sometime this
Yes,
season,
yes, you
and we
will.
could
You
circle
will.
back. But thank you so much. Have a great night, and to everybody out there, thank you for listening. I do appreciate it. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate it.
Take care now. Bye bye.
Okay, so really want to thank Bobby from Yankee Twitter from joining the show. Really appreciate him giving again, he gave an hour of his time. Really appreciate it. If you're watching live, please like the stream. It really helps us out. Subscribe to the channel as well if you are here. And yeah, man, everyone, the 2026 baseball season's here. Can't wait for next Wednesday opening night against the San Francisco Giants. So looking forward to that. We'll be back next week with another stream, and we'll be talking New York sports as always. So until then, have a good rest of your week. Enjoy the NCAA tournament if you're watching that, and